so exciting. I am just beyond thrilled to be able to share this pop-up with you tonight, Kirshen. You know, God is so instrumental. One of my Kingdom Warrior Battle Babe sisters had shared you with a few of us in the group. And I started following you, and this was probably about 3-4 months ago. And I was just really amazed at the insight that God was giving you as far as kingdom entrepreneurship was concerned. And so, needless to say, to be able to meet you at the Web3 Summit, this has been 2 weeks now, 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? Time does fly, was an honor and an amazing thing. So just kind of, you know, for those that may not know you yet, just kind of share who you are and what God is speaking to you regarding kingdom entrepreneurship in this hour.
Sure. First of all, it's an absolute honor for me. I love what you do. You know, God's graced you so much. You know, I may have been joking with you about the immortality that's come upon you already, but honestly, that's the truth. You know, that's what God is doing in this hour, and He's setting an example using you right now. You know, to everybody, and it's a beautiful thing what He's doing. And so the wisdom that's coming upon you, I really believe that everybody, your audience, is going to be able to tap into something like that as well. So it's a very cool thing. So a little bit about me. I am a kingdom entrepreneur, but at the same time, minister. So the whole prophetic realm is there as well. So God has been giving me dreams, visions for a while now. The Lord took me up, one of my first dreams, the Lord took me up onto a mountain overlooking all these trees, and I knew what it meant, right? But I was in the dream, I've fallen backwards onto a teleportation platform. I end up another part of the mountain, and I'm overlooking all these trees again, right? And so I found out later it wasn't just a dream. It was actually me going into the place where Judgment Day would actually occur. And so it was a really significant moment. That was probably one of the first dreams I've ever had. And I believe that's where God was calling me into the shepherding role that I wouldn't need to do in the days ahead. So that happened ages ago. That was like at least let's say almost 10 years, almost 21. So let's say almost 10 years. And then God started to open more dreams and visions up to me. And then in 2019, had a bunch of encounters with the Lord, baptized in fire, oh my goodness, vibrating in bed for 3 days straight, electrified. It was intense. Another occasion, I literally it felt like an angel or God sitting on top of me, because literally, just to give you perspective, I'm only like 50-ish kgs, and which is about 110 pounds max, less than that. And 2 6-foot guys could barely carry me out of the church. The weight of God was so heavy on me. And so they almost pretty much dragged me out. I couldn't drive. And so, yeah, the power of God hit me really hard. And I was in the back seat. I remember I was prophesying over the guy driving my car, because I couldn't drive my car. So he was saying, Kirshen, you got to stop. My leg is shaking on the accelerator. You got to stop. So I was telling him everything about his kids and everything, you know. So the prophetic realm opened up like crazy for me. In the process, God pulled me out of the employee work force, and He said, okay, I want you to start to build up a business, etc., online. Right? In the process, 2020, I had been taken up in a vision. So no, it wasn't a vision. I went through a dream, and then I had an encounter with the Father face to face. As I'm seeing you now, falling through thick darkness in eternity. I can always tell people it's eternity. It wasn't just heaven. God is outside of heaven. And so as I was seeing Him face to face, He told me, I've given you governmental authority. And so as He said that, something else happened in the dream. But pretty much I was unlocked with authority, able to bring the kingdom to earth. So I didn't have any good for the kingdom. I had no capacity. And all of a sudden, I had it in one go. And I felt this tight band around my head and my brain shifting, right? So this guy, Adam Thompson, was part of that time. And he had prophesied over me that my left brain was very active, but my right brain wasn't. And so it helped me to tap into kingdom realities and the prophetic. So I wasn't so logical anymore. It was more creative. And all of a sudden, I was able to tap into creativity. So that's where all of this started to happen for me. Yeah.
That's
So
amazing. That, I mean, your encounters with God is amazing in themselves. But then to have that shift of your brain power to tap into the creative, that's wow. That's what we all need. We really do. I know that you have a platform that was already established, but that God is truly enlarging in this hour. Can you talk a little bit about that, the Kingdom Entrepreneurial Platform?
sure. Okay, so God had me first off just making a bit of content on YouTube and developing my seer gift, my dream interpretations, etc. Out of that, he started to create something called prophetic insights, and so I started to do that. Then he had me creating other content for just worship and soaking music and taking people to heaven, etc. And then he said, okay, now start interviewing people, interview the prophets. And so I started to reach out to prophets and started to get them on. And that was specifically called the Kingdom Discovery Channel. And so God said, after that, I'm going to expand this now. It needs to be kingdom entrepreneurs and ministers. So not just the prophets. So that's still going to be there. But now this is called Heaven's Entrepreneurs TV. Right. And so out of Heaven's Entrepreneurs TV, I really believe that the kingdom innovators and creators, all the founders, the founding fathers and mothers, I should say, are going to be broadcasted out and have all of their things elevated as well. And so when they see us working together, collaborating like that, the world is going to look and go, yeah, I want to be a part of that too. I want to have that kind of community, that culture, because that's what we should carry, the glory culture. And so, yeah, he has me doing that. And so the Heavens Entrepreneurs TV network is what maybe you've seen floating around. That's what I'm doing now. And so that's all about elevating the kingdom entrepreneurs and ministers as well, and forming this kingdom entrepreneur hub so that we have these kingdom communities being birthed out, and everybody, this will be like pop-ups, like locally as well as nationally and regionally. And that's a super crucial thing for what God is doing in the days ahead. I believe it's also for the famine, and that's what it's really about. So because the famine looks a bit different, right? We have to form a new kind of economy and currency which bypasses what the world is doing. And because they're going to chip everybody, I think, we have to not have that. And so if we are able to form our own currency, we can completely bypass that. And we have our own community, everything circulating within our communities. We never need to get it from the secular world or whatever they're doing. Yeah.
That's amazing. You touched on a lot there, but knowing how the Father orchestrates things in the fact that he always takes care of his in the midst of the famine or whatever. I mean, we think of the children of Israel in Goshen and how everything in Goshen was protected. You know, all of the plagues and everything that hit Egypt was in Egypt. Goshen was protected. And I believe that in the same hour is the same type of scenario where there's a famine coming. There's definitely, all you have to do is look around. You don't have to be spooky. You don't have to even be prophetic. Just look around and see what's going on. But God always orchestrates something in the midst of what's going on in the world, so to speak, within his body and within his children's lives. I am a very, very big proponent of keeping relevant, staying relevant within the kingdom. And I think what's really, really sad is that so many different things have availed themselves over the past, say, 50 years, where there's been this huge wealth transfer going on that the people in the kingdom have missed a lot of it because they've set back. They've, number one, sat in the four walls of the church on the pews instead of going out to do like Jesus did.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
You know, they stayed within the church, but this is an hour now where it's crucial. I really believe that, and I'm going to ask you to touch on that, but where it's crucial to be relevant and recognize what is going on. Even the summit we just attended, that with the Web3 and cryptocurrency and NFTs and the blockchain and all these different things that are out there that Christians are still kind of stepping back from instead of going and being a part of what God has orchestrated for a great wealth transfer, for us to be relevant and meet and reach our babies. Okay, I'm very super generational minded, probably because of my age, and I've got 4 generations. Like I'm all the way down to my great grandbabies. Okay, I got great grandbabies running around here. So I'm very generational in the fact that the more we as the body of Christ have sat on the sideline, the more the enemy has infiltrated our children and pulled them into the dark side. And how are we going to reach the children if we don't go and get them or give them a more excellent way? The word teaches us, show a more excellent way. And so share your feelings on being relevant in this hour where Web3, the metaverse, and all of those pieces are concerned.
You know, first of all, technology, I always say this, technology is from God, right? The devil can't create anything, he just perverts stuff. And so this is why it's so crucial that we must be the ones running the show, ones that are at the forefront of it all, because then we can steward it and say the direction it needs to go. And the world follows us instead of the kingdom of darkness perverting it, right? And so it's so important for, when you say relevant, being on top of every single thing, checking out the news, who's doing what, you know. I really believe connecting with influencers, connecting with other people in the same space is probably the biggest way to do that. Probably the fastest way to learn things as well, not just reading up articles and checking out the news. Honestly, you can do that, but it takes time. But in the process of sitting with somebody, you take what is upon them as well, the knowledge and information that God has given them about the scenario or whatever it is, you're able to absorb that as well. In the process, you're able to add on your wisdom that you've learned, and together it builds up. And so connecting with the right people, super important, being relevant like that. Also, if we want to be relevant to what the world is doing, we need to know the plans, the schemes of the enemy behind this stuff. So especially when it comes to economy, like I always talk about some really crazy things. Like they really do some bad things. They really do. You look at the Grammy Awards. I don't know if you had a look at that. Didn't see that. So there's a lot of satanic rituals and stuff like that, right? It's bad. It's real bad. And so that's just a taste of what they're doing. They don't show you what they're really doing behind the scenes, because there's a lot of stuff they don't. So we have to be advancing faster, you know, and we take hold of it. Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. One of the reasons why I love Kingdom Warriors so much, I've been involved there now since April, is because they're not just talking about it, they're being about it. You know, we've got our film series premiere happening in May. Like, you know, we've actually went out and funded getting relevant entertainment created within a year's time. Working on a game, all these different things. That where I have a problem with the quote unquote church, okay, is that they're so busy sitting back and talking about all of the problems that are going on, but they're not going out to solve any of them.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem. And it is a generational problem, you know? So I'm a baby boomer. but I'm relevant even in the young people's lives because I have a wisdom to share with them. And I can
So
meet them on their level.
yes,
I'm not the one that's thinking I know everything, because even the word tells you a child shall lead them. They have things that are relevant as well. Their wisdom is beyond a lot of our wisdom at their age, just
yes,
because of what they experience in life. I talk to my grandchildren. All of my grandchildren are grown. Okay. But when I talk to them, the things that they experience at younger ages are a lot more difficult than some of the things that I experienced in my growing up, because I grew
yes.
up in a different era.
Mhm.
So we have to stop sitting on the sideline and thinking we know it all, or or just moaning and complaining instead
Yeah,
of going out there and
yeah,
doing and advancing the kingdom. We talk about this 7 spheres of influence, and how are we going to make changes if we're not at the table of authority? The only way
mhm,
you can enact change is if you're there present where the decisions are being made, so that you can
mhm.
infiltrate with kingdom decisions. Where
So
do you see us as the ecclesia of God now? We
yeah.
are his governmental body in this earth realm. Where do you see us excelling at in this sphere?
So do you mean all seven? Or
Yeah,
just yeah.
I want all
So
7. I
yeah.
don't want to leave anything
Oh
to the
yeah.
enemy. I want them all.
Yeah, exactly. So like right now, so it'll be business and media that we are focusing on at the moment, right? So there's education and everything else. But if the only way to take that is through intimacy with Jesus, whether we like it or not. That's the first way in. Okay,
Mhm.
Jesus says he's the door, the way, the truth, and the life, right? The door into the kingdom. And so we have to go through him, through intimacy. And then in the process of that intimacy, we are able to tap into a greater level of the prophetic and so on. So we cannot do things any longer in the flesh, in the carnal mind, or anything like that. Everything must be done in the spirit. So this is something that I do with the Heavens Entrepreneurs mentees that I have. And the Heavens Entrepreneurs is about kingdom leaders, prophetic kingdom leaders, but they also are focused on ascending into heaven and getting the blueprints, coming back, and then orchestrating it out. And so this is totally different to what people are used to at all. This is what I do. I will sit here, I'll pray in tongues for hours, I'll wait on God for hours, and until I get something, I'm not going to go act on it. And so I will hear things in the spirit, I will see things. Everything I've created, I've seen it in a vision before I've gone and done it, right? I've had it downloaded into me. And when I go to do the work, I will make sure it feels right in my spirit, right? Before anything happens. So in terms of taking those mountains now, it says, who can ascend the hill of the Lord? He that has clean hands and a pure heart. So we need to have clean motives and good deeds, right? So, or pure motives and clean deeds, let's say that. And so in the process of doing that, the only way to ascend in the spirit now, we need to operate from Mount Zion. And so we need to also be working with angels. So I'm talking about something completely different now, because it's not just in the natural. This is not meant to be done in the natural. You do it in the spirit first, you decree and declare in the realms of God, and then you pull. And so God has taught me something about taking over thrones and dominions and powers. And so what that is spiritual principalities and authorities in the heavenly places. And so the only way to administer that on the earth, for example, let's say broadcasts are not going out the way they should be, and we're not gaining ground. There is a spiritual warfare that can take place, that we can go and create war with these principalities, because you can't just command a principality out. You need to release angels. You need to take over the throne as well. So it says that the prince of the power of the air, right, has governing rulership. So for example, it was Prince of Persia that held up Gabriel to bring the word, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm going a bit long-winded. So
Good.
Gabriel had to bring the word for Daniel, And so it got held up. And so he had to pray. And so Michael had to come and help him. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Because there's so many demonic things happening, so many demonic things. And now that the veil is even thinner than ever before, there's so much demonic activity that the manifestation of those demons are coming everywhere. And you can see it throughout media. And so the only way to do that is to overtake that throne, right? So you need to sit in that throne in Christ, whatever that is. So it's the mountain of media or the mountain of business. You sit upon that mountain, you overtake it, you overshadow it. And literally in the spirit, you can visualize and use your imagination, decree and declare what you want to happen. And this is what I do to Heaven's entrepreneurs as well. And I decree forth what I want to happen. And then I notice things begin to shift according to what needs to happen. So yeah, that's a little
That's
gist.
good. That's
Yeah.
good. People aren't teaching that, Christian. That's the problem. You know, we people are going after fluff. You know, they're so busy trying to get the houses and the cars and all of that stuff that they're not taking territory. They're not taking dominion. You know, that was something that God really impressed in my spirit just recently, dealing with the number 6, and 6 being the number of man. And he said, well, what did I do on that 6th day with man? I gave him a directive. I told him to be fruitful, to multiply, to subdue, to take dominion. Okay. And then just I think it was week before last, just like you said, you got to be in that place with God. You've got to be in that communing with God. And he pointed something out, that we are always asking him to open doors for us, to give us opportunities. And he said, I gave you keys to the kingdom. What do you do with keys? You unlock the door. I've given you power and authority and the keys. So why are you waiting on me to open the door? I gave you everything you need to open the door. And then he placed us in a high vantage place, in heavenly places, so we can see the enemy afar off and already know what's going on.
Exactly.
You know? And so this is, I'm loving talking to you, because you don't really get to talk to people that have kingdom mindset like this all the time. You know, there's a few, but you don't, most of the time, people are too busy going after things. They're too busy talking, murmuring, and complaining about nothing. Because if you're not going to do anything about it, then you might as well be quiet. So I'm like, I'm loving this, the fact that, you know, you do enlist the power of the angels. God said that he gave us the ability to work with them.
That's right.
And why aren't we? Why aren't we? So that's all part, this is real about being relevant. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that just people haven't been taught it, you know, and it's, yes, it is the church's fault, but it's also not their fault, because there has like Constantine who came in and messed up the churches. You know, they put the pastor at the front and said, okay, the government's going to pay you, and that's it, and turned into religion. And so it's never meant to be like that. We're meant to have the fivefold. But even beyond that, God said to me, don't just stay with the fivefold anymore, go beyond. And so the whole point of the fivefold is to become a mature son of God, and the mature son of God can do all things. Right. And if he is able to govern whatever God gives him charge of now, God will give them charge over his courts as well, you know. And from those positions, you can orchestrate many things, not just on earth, but in the heavenlies. And that goes far beyond. That goes far beyond. Yeah.
So what is it going to take, do you think, to get the body out of that church mentality, okay, that religiosity, because it really is about relationship. Nothing happens in the kingdom without that relationship with the Lord. So what's it going to take to move us into where we are ruling and reigning as we've been called to do?
Yeah. Two things come to mind, power and presence, right? So the presence of God, we have to have that. And it can't just be just talk. The kingdom of God is not a matter of talk, but of power as well, right? So we have the presence, but then it's backed up with true, authentic power. And so we can preach all we want, but unless we are able to stand there and administer the authority that's been given to us, and remember, it comes back to that intimacy, because you don't have authority without intimacy with God, right? And so the closer you are to God, the closer you have, more authority you have. The further away you are, then the less authority you have. That's what happened with Satan. He had all authority next to God, right? Second in charge, pretty much. And he took 1/3 of the angels, pretty much. And now, as he got thrown and cast out, he lost all of that authority. Now he's just a thief trying to steal it back, right? And so people need to be educated on this, but they also have to have that desire and a hunger, and they have to be desiring what God wants, not just what people say, you know. And the approval of man is one of the biggest things we have to get rid of, you know, getting over the fear of man, approval of man. So once people come out of the church system, they have to study for themselves, study the word of God to show themselves approved. In the process, they will have a kingdom mindset being given to them, because it's not someone else just feeding them information. It's them getting information directly from the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
I think I agree with everything you just said. I believe that it really starts with that hunger and thirst for the Lord, for that intimacy. As you said, it's like, you know, how do couples get together? It's because they really desire to be with one another. And throughout the word, God uses the illustration of marriage to illustrate his relationship with us. We've got to desire him above all else. You know, it's like when we get to that point, I remember, I've been saved now for 34 years, so I've been in this a long time. But I remember when I first came in, it was like I was all in. And so, you know, I'm doing the shut-ins. I'm, you know, long periods of fasting, long periods of just shutting away with the Lord, which I thank God for, because it is paid off to me now, you know. But it's like that hunger and that thirst after righteousness. Yes, you want to hunger and thirst after righteousness, but more importantly, you just want to hunger and thirst after his presence. Just to be in his presence, to have that koinonia with him, to have conversation. You know, we've made things so difficult when it's all about relationship. It should not be difficult. Like you and I are sitting here conversing. It should not be difficult to sit in the presence of God and have conversation. And he welcomes it. He welcomes it. You know? It's amazing.
He's a father.
Amazing.
So we just, yeah, he's a good father.
He is.
He is.
He is. He is. You know, and he takes care of his children. You know, the more we get to know him, the better we can understand ourselves. We were created in his image and in his likeness. So, you know, what we never want to do is try to steal his glory, because we don't have to. Because we're his glory bearers, he's given it to us. We're his representatives in this earth realm. So we don't have to, you know, try to be better than, or, you know what I'm saying? As long as we can have that type of relationship where we can share with him back and forth, you know, I mean, that's what it's all about. And then that's when these huge downloads come. So before we leave, I wanted to talk about that. Is what God is doing in this hour, because, you know, listening to the people at the summit and just in listening to some of your teachings and whatever, what God is doing right now is incredible, because these visions are massive. What is your encouragement to the people who are getting these huge downloads and they're kind of afraid of them, because it's like, what am I going to do with all of this?
Oh, what can I say? I would say stay humble, of course.
Definitely.
Every single person who is called to do something big has to go through a humbling process. And I believe that's called the wilderness, what many people coin that as. And so whatever people are called to, they usually go through themselves, right? So if it's finance, they go through a lot of struggle with finance. Eventually they're pulled out because they learn every principle, but at the same time, they have the character and endurance put inside of them to be able to steward it correctly, you know.